Today, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Heidi Umpadorban and I'm co-chair of the Rotary Club of Adelaide's Reconciliation Action Plan. The other co-chair here is Mark Matthews, who did the Acknowledgement of Country today. So I'm proud to affirm that Rotary Adelaide's commitment to reconciliation is not only strong, but now deeply embedded in who we are and how we operate as a club. Nearly 2 years ago, we launched our Reflect Reconciliation Action Plan with a clear intention to listen, learn and build respect, enduring relationships with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. Today we mark an important milestone because reconciliation is no longer something that sits alongside our work. It is becoming part of the way we do our work. Reconciliation Australia has endorsed our second Reflect RAP, recognising Rotary Adelaide's contribution to a national movement grounded in relationships, respect and opportunity. Over the past 2 years, we have strengthened relationships with Aboriginal organisations, participated in National Reconciliation Week and NAIDOC Week, and learned from Aboriginal leaders, including our honorary member, Kaurna Elder Rod O'Brien, in the early days. We have supported Aboriginal health scholarships, partnered with the Josephite Reconciliation Circle, those sisters are still around, created opportunities for cultural learning and truth-telling, and built governance, importantly, through our RAP working group to ensure accountability and continuity. So our second RAP deepens that work and ensures reconciliation is not dependent on any one president, committee or moment in time, but is part of our club's identity, culture and future. So as we move forward, and as Gildy said in her opening welcome, we do so with humility, purpose and optimism, reaffirming our wholehearted commitment to walking this path together. Thank you to all the members of Rotary Adelaide and especially to the RAP working group, members here today, Mark, Janine and Janet, Gildy, Rajiv, past President Trevor and past President Cam Pearce, Priyanka Chopra who was co-chair with me for the first 18 months. And also to all the Peace Builder group who dedicated over the past 2 years also their contributions. So thank you to everybody. Our second RAP, we'll be putting that up on our website in the next couple of weeks very proudly. So thank you to everybody for the wonderful support for reconciliation. And it is now my pleasure to introduce our special guest speaker, Marius Liddle. Marius is a proud Arrernte man, which is in Alice Springs area of the Northern Territory. He's living and working on Kaurna Country and the founder and director of MTL Consulting Services, a 100% Aboriginal-owned consultancy focused on community capacity, Aboriginal business growth and economic participation. And he's also the 2025 SA NAIDOC Scholar of the Year, which is a great achievement. Today, Marius will share his personal journey and professional insights into reconciliation, community engagement and cultural understanding, inviting us to reflect on the role we all play in building stronger relationships and a more united future. Please join me in warmly welcoming Marius Liddle.
Hi everyone, good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me today. It genuinely means a lot to be here with you. Before I begin, I just want to acknowledge that we are meeting on Kaurna Country, and I do pay my respects to Kaurna's elders past and present, and to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here today, including Brother Nick. That was a great preso from you, so thank you. Incredibly important work that you're doing and working towards too, so keep it up. Before I get further into it, I just want to acknowledge that our community has had some significant losses recently. One that really hit home for me was the passing of Professor Peter Buckskin, who passed last week. For those that don't know, Peter was an absolute titan of the Aboriginal education industry. He was a staunch leader. He empowered future generations, and he just was a good person. So, yeah, there's a lot of tributes to Peter going around at the moment, and I genuinely think that the work that he had done over his lifetime has helped build a really strong foundation for Aboriginal education that will last decades. So thank you, Heidi, for the introduction. Yes, proud Arrernte man. So culturally, we roll out ours. So Arrernte is how we say it. Arrernte is the less complex way to say it. But yes, sunny Alice Springs. I'm a long way from the homeland. But I was born here on Kaurna Country at a young age. My growing family, so I've got 4 brothers, and mum and dad shipped us all up to the Riverland, and so I went to school at Loxton, and then got to a stage where 2003, like I finished school in 2000, and 2003 I thought, I've actually got to do something in my life. I didn't want to go down the path of agriculture and block work, so I moved to Adelaide, entered the public sector as a trainee, and that's where I guess this journey of mine started. So to that note, as Heidi said, MTL Consulting Services, 100% Aboriginal-owned. I'm the sole shareholder. I have a team of 3 people that work with me. I don't say for me because we all work collaboratively together. We work on some really, really cool things. Community engagement, stakeholder engagement, community capacity building, as Heidi touched on. Capacity building can be quite broad as well. It's governance training, it's capability building, it's building up future generations within remote and regional communities. It's incredible work. Something that I'm really passionate about is Aboriginal business growth and economic participation. My experience is that that's a huge lever for closing that gap of Indigenous inequality that has been so prevalent within our communities for decades. I also want to acknowledge too that one of my team members, Rafaela Erst, I believe she's a member of Rotary Adelaide, Rafa has been with me since the beginning. So MTL came about through an MBA class in 2018, 2019. At the time, I had this concept of, I want to do something Aboriginal employment, because that was my expertise in state government. I want to set up a business, and she backed me, supported me, and then COVID hit. And so all of a sudden, employment turned to business and strategic planning and stakeholder engagement. Rafa has been with me from the beginning. Incredibly awesome person. She's intelligent. She's got huge emotional intelligence. She also had her second child last Thursday, a little baby boy named Charlie. So she wanted to be here today but couldn't. So I just would like to acknowledge Rafa. Finally, I do want to say up front too that the perspectives I'm about to share through this presentation are my own perspectives. It's come about from my own journey, my lived experiences, and I guess the way that I've been mentored through my community mentors, my business mentors, just the way that I've been brought up. And I think that diversity, while they are my sort of perspectives, our mob has incredibly diverse views. So my views on reconciliation may not align with other Aboriginal people, and that's okay. That diversity enriches the thinking and conversations that we all have moving forward. So this preso, I will try and keep it short. I know we are pretty strict on timing, so I put this together not so much focused on theory, but more about practical actions that hopefully people can think about as they leave here today. So I grew up surrounded by strong public service values, particularly through my parents, and for a long time I genuinely believed my pathway would be a lifelong career in the public sector, and business ownership was never really in my planning. It was through some changing life circumstances that I found myself starting my own business, and honestly it turned out to be one of the most formative decisions in my life. The MBA journey at the University of Adelaide was pivotal. I don't come from a family of academics, and so when I applied for the scholarship, I genuinely didn't think I'd be seriously considered. That then led me to countless years of this crushing imposter syndrome where I'd be sitting in MBA classes around accomplished people, accomplished business owners, and here I am kind of, I'm leaving government and I'm starting consultancy. I just felt out of place in every conversation. That feeling dwindled though. After about the second year, I realised that, hang on, I'm sitting in classes of academics, but they're not better or worse than me. We're just speaking different languages, and that's where that communication thing that really forms the way I operate is really cemented. That also helped reshape how I think about leadership, systems, economics, and the role business can play in creating real change. I came to realise that blending public service experience, business thinking, and genuine community connection could become a powerful platform for creating practical change. And finally, being recognised as a South Australian NAIDOC Scholar of the Year was incredibly humbling. It reminded me that the work we do in community and for community, it matters and is seen. So it was a good reminder for, I guess, the countless hours that I put into some of my projects, and it's like, I hope it's having an impact, right, or it's helping people. But that award, coming from community, being recognised by my peers, just really sort of grounded me. And even now, almost 12 months later, it's still a little bit surreal because I had no inkling that I was going to get nominated for it. I was sitting at the town hall. I was there to support other people, and then when they called out my name, one of my friends, Stacey from the White Trust, was sitting next to me, and she's like, "Oh, that's you." I'm like, "What?" And like, what do I do? And she goes, "Get up on stage." I'm like, "Okay, fine." So I ran up on stage, but yeah, incredibly humbling experience. So sometimes reconciliation is often associated with a welcome to country or acknowledgement of country statement or a badge on a website. My experience is that while symbolism does absolutely matter, real reconciliation can't stop there. Something I've learned through this journey is that reconciliation works best when it stops being viewed as someone else's issue. It becomes stronger when it's embraced as a shared responsibility by all of us. Reconciliation, in my experience, is about relationships built on trust, consistency, and a genuine willingness to show up over time. It's about respect, honouring culture, history, and identity, not just during Reconciliation Week, but every single day. It's about truth-telling, being willing to acknowledge the full story of our shared history, including the parts that are uncomfortable. And finally, it's about action, turning intent into something real, because good intentions without action, they simply aren't enough to introduce and sustain change. So I often see conversations and media coverage about Aboriginal communities framed entirely around deficit language modelling. It's around what's broken, what's lacking, what needs fixing, alleged resources and entitlements, the list goes on. But I found that sometimes communities are not lacking capability. What they often lack is equitable access to opportunity, investment, influence, and long-term partnerships. To me, it says that that's a systems problem, not necessarily a community problem. I found too that Aboriginal communities, with their extensive knowledge system of over 65,000 years, are incredibly innovative. And this, in my opinion, is significant cultural expertise that, when treated properly and respectfully, leads to really positive and sustained outcomes. I said earlier that one area I'm quite passionate about is economic participation. And so when I've seen communities have genuine access to opportunities like business growth, employment pathways, real decision-making power, it creates long-term empowerment and moves them away from a dependency model. And a phrase that I hear consistently from all regions of the state that I work in is, we're asking for a hand up, not a handout. We don't want gifts, we just want to be able to have access to that platform. So across South Australia and beyond, I'm stoked to see that there are incredible Aboriginal leaders, organisations and businesses creating meaningful impact every single day. What I think is the challenge is ensuring our systems genuinely support and amplify both those efforts, rather than unintentionally creating more barriers. So whenever I'm working with someone, and I work with a huge cohort of people. I work with Aboriginal communities, remote, regional, metro. I work with Aboriginal businesses, from entrepreneurs, startups to mature businesses. I work with public sector agencies at the state and Commonwealth level. So I work with a very diverse cohort. But one of the first questions I ask is, whatever thing that we're working on, Are Aboriginal people involved at the beginning of conversations, or are they only at the end once the decisions and the framework's already made and established, and then it's almost like they need that cultural seal of approval? Practical reconciliation means moving beyond consultation for the sake of compliance. It means genuinely designing with communities and not for communities. Building genuine partnerships means including Aboriginal voices early, not as that box-ticking exercise that I mentioned earlier, but as genuine contributors to the design and direction of the work. Supporting Aboriginal business is one of the most tangible things organisations can do right now. Procurement decisions create real economic opportunity. Every dollar spent with an Aboriginal business matters. And just on that note too, that's something that I live by too. So if I win work, my first instinct is to, what can I procure from other Aboriginal businesses? Is it printing and marketing collateral? Is it website design? Is it, whatever it may be? Because I've seen firsthand that when I share my business and opportunities with others, it creates this flow-on effect where it leads to employment pathways. People that may not have had an opportunity to work with a business, someone might take them on, even if it's on a short-term contract. So I've seen that domino effect really play out in real time. And I want to say something about trust too. Trust takes time because in our culture, relationships are not transactional. Some of the strongest outcomes I've seen come from organisations that genuinely commit to walking alongside communities over the long term and not just showing up when there's something like a project on the table. So in closing on that slide, I think reconciliation should never become performative. The goal should always be creating meaningful, lasting impact and ensuring opportunities genuinely flow back to Aboriginal people and communities. I wasn't sure to include this slide. I'm not a tech expert by any means. However, from a practicality perspective, I'm seeing this growing thing, and I thought, no, I have a moral and cultural obligation to bring this into the conversation. So AI, artificial intelligence in cultural spaces, is increasing massively regardless of the industry or the sector. I just see this increased growth, and it's like it's compounded in the last 12 to 18 months. It's huge. So I've seen AI used for genuinely good purposes. I've seen it help organisations draft documents, meet grant requirements, stretch limited resources further. So when it's used for good, for lack of a better term, I've seen it can really help and empower people. I've also seen it used in ways that concern me. I've seen AI-generated artwork created without community input or cultural permission, and that's on the rise. This threatens the legitimacy and authenticity of an entire industry. The other thing too I've seen is AI-written reconciliation action plans presented as culturally informed despite lacking genuine First Nations relationships or lived experience. And I'll throw an example out there about where I was asked recently to quote, a lot of the work I do is around reconciliation action plan development. And the way I approach RAPs is not to write it for someone. I want to work with someone so they develop, I guess, the knowledge and skills culturally so that they feel confident, acting in that space. Recently I was asked to quote to support a large organisation with their RAP, and when I looked at it, I scoped out the work, I sent my quote through, and then the feedback I had was, well, we can use ChatGPT to write this. What are you going to do differently to ChatGPT? When that comment came back to me, it was early morning and I'd had 2 coffees, so I was fine. I just went, you know what, water off a duck's back, it's fine. But I did respond respectfully, and I challenged them to say, where's the cultural lens, the cultural authority coming from in your document development? Whether it's a RAP or a policy, where's it coming from? Because anybody can put Aboriginal imagery onto a document and say, yeah, it's culture, but mob are pretty good at distinguishing when something's genuinely developed or if it's just tokenistically slapped together. So, RAPs. Also, organisations using AI to create the appearance of engagement without actually doing the work. So something I've worked long and hard fought is to build genuine respectful relationships with communities all across the state. A lot of my report and engagement framework development and report writing references that, but when other organisations say we engage whatever mob, it could be where a project is based, but they're not actually engaging that mob, but for the reporting purposes they say they do, and they can make it look flash using AI, and it's like that mob is genuinely left out of decision making conversations, and it's pretty sad. So I guess with this slide, I tried to move towards technology can support genuine relationships, but it cannot replace them. And I think the question a lot of organisations need to ask themselves is, are we using AI to deepen engagement, or are we using it to cut corners? One thing I've learned across government, business and community work is that sustainable outcomes are rarely achieved in isolation. The strongest results I've seen have always come when people work together respectfully, honestly and consistently, with genuine humility and a willingness to listen. Empowering communities means creating the conditions for self-determination, not managing outcomes from the outside. Prioritising trust means showing up, following through and being accountable, especially when the conversations can get challenging. Genuine partnerships means sitting alongside communities, not in front or behind them, but sitting next to them. And shared decisions mean Aboriginal people having a genuine seat at the table, not just as an advisory role when it's convenient. Long-term thinking means resisting the pull towards short-term programs and quick wins in favour of relationships and investments that actually change trajectories over time. And I think that when we get that right, and I've seen it happen, the outcomes are stronger for everybody, not just Aboriginal communities, but everybody. So, reconciliation does not require perfection. You don't need to have all the answers to contribute meaningfully. What I think it does require, though, is a willingness to start somewhere, stay engaged and keep learning, even when it becomes uncomfortable, and that goes for myself too. So over the next 30 days, I thought a simple challenge for people here today could be supporting one Aboriginal business. It could be as simple as buying a coffee, engaging a consultant, choosing an Aboriginal business supplier. But procurement decisions create real economic opportunity, and they send a clear signal about your values. Learn about the country you live and work on. Find out whose country it is. Learn some of the history. Even a small amount of knowledge can open a doorway to deeper conversations about history, protocols and heritage. But I will caveat that with a warning, it could be a rabbit hole. Some of the stories culturally can be so interesting and captivating. And even myself, like if I start learning about something, I find it hard to switch off because it's just fascinating stuff. I put in there read or listen to First Nations voices. So there are brilliant Aboriginal writers, podcasters, leaders and storytellers, Spotify, YouTube. Seek them out, not just during Reconciliation Week. There's a whole lot of different messaging out there if you want motivational speakers, if you want that cultural insight. There's a huge base of which to look for. And one of my favourites is attending a community or cultural event. So yes, Reconciliation Week starts today. We've got NAIDOC Week in July. These are 2 periods of the year for Aboriginal communities that are like so celebratory. There's good energy, there's good engagement. If ever you're on the fence about, should I go to the NAIDOC March or should I go and see what Town do you reckon the West event is like? Now's the time to do it because it's just the positivity and the engagement around it. It's very rewarding. And the last one I had was one meaningful conversation about reconciliation. It doesn't have to be a comfortable one, but a meaningful one. So with a colleague, a friend, someone in your network. But what I focused on was that small actions consistently taken create that long-term impact, and reconciliation should shape how we work, lead and engage throughout the entire year, not only in the last week of May. So with that said, I just want to thank you so much for your time and your engagement today. And I just want to leave you with this. Reconciliation is not something distant, abstract, or someone else's responsibility. It's practical, it's relational, and it's about the choices we make every day in how we lead, how we spend, how we listen, and who we include. I genuinely think we all have a role to play, and the fact that organisations like Rotary continue to make space for these conversations genuinely matters, so thank you. If you'd like to continue the conversation about reconciliation, Aboriginal procurement, how your organisation can take meaningful steps, please connect with me. I would love to hear what you're working on. And I just want to sincerely acknowledge the allies who have continued showing up and staying engaged, particularly through the uncertainty and emotion following the referendum from recent times. There's a lot of trauma and hurt in our communities, and sometimes the conversations can be pretty heavy. So the work of our allies, and I'll call Niall out as a strong ally. He, when I'm in a conversation that gets heavy, and I might be emotionally tapped out from it, from having the same types of conversations, and then there's the Niall phase of the world that step in and support. Just that strong allied relationship means a lot more. So to all of our allies, thank you. And with that said, that is my presentation done. I think we have a time for questions, so.
Marius, thank you for a very thoughtful presentation. We have a very brief time for questions, perhaps one or two, if there is, from the floor, please. Now I'm seriously in trouble.
Thank you so much for a passionate and thought-provoking presentation. My question is around supporting Aboriginal businesses. How do we find them? Is there a central point you can go to, or a search tip?
Yep. Great question. Without wanting to confuse the response, there's different resources. So at the moment, South Australia doesn't have a centralised Aboriginal business point of contact. We have different entities operating what I think is in isolation with each other. What I am working towards is trying to build a central point, and a lot of the work I do is around advising where people might say, hey Marius, like we want to engage a business, for this piece of work, or if they want to do this, do you know of anyone? And this then leads to analysis from my end, where a lot of the work I do is with businesses directly, and I have a pretty good assessment of the ones that genuinely engage, are authentic. I'm not sure if everybody's heard the term black cladding and that sort of thing. So black cladding, there's a huge rise in black cladding in the Aboriginal business space nationally at the moment, and essentially it's around joint ventures are established that might be majority Aboriginal owned, so 51% Aboriginal owned, 49% non-Aboriginal owned, but the non-controlling entity actually controls it. So the shareholder agreement, the way that the business is structured, it's tokenistic. That 51% ownership has no legitimate authority in the way the decision operates. So unfortunately, we're seeing a huge rise in black cladding, especially here in South Australia at the moment. And I see it as my duty to try and keep ahead of it. So, yeah, but it's a good question. I think so. Yeah. Without giving myself too much work, so.
Thanks, Marius. Thanks for a great presentation. It was so enjoyable. My question to you is around closing the gap, and in particular Priority Reform 3. I'm a public servant, and transforming government organisations.
Yeah.
What do you think government can do better? I mean, there's so much out there, but I really connect with your comment around good intentions without actions. Well, they're just good intentions.
Yeah, great question, Sally. I will try and keep my response brief. So my experience with government agencies at the moment is there's this renewed sense of authentic engagement. So I'm talking to multiple agencies about authentic Aboriginal engagement frameworks, but probably the biggest win that I've seen is and I might get told off for announcing this before the Commissioner announces it, but we're about to launch the Aboriginal Community Controlled Public Sector Secondee project. So we have a particular word for it. If you watch my socials, it'll get announced sometime this week. But essentially, me and my team have worked with parts of the public sector to build a very unique secondee program where public servants can go into a supervised Aboriginal community controlled work environment and they are exposed to the work styles, the cultural knowledges that happen in that space. And then this model is a two-way model. So public sector employees can go into ACOs, but also ACO staff can go into the public sector. This has taken some time to establish. So we did a pilot project 2 years ago, very small scale, and we found that it worked incredibly well. I'm a little bit nervous about this one because we've set ourselves some pretty lofty measurables on it, but the work that I do directly with ACOs and public sector agencies, I've been keeping an eye on both cohorts recently, and there's an appetite for it. And it doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be bogged down in bureaucracy and forms and policies. It's like, you know, we've got intent here, we've got intent there. Let's make this happen, and let's make it happen so it's legal and it's culturally safe for all participants, but it's also impactful. There's outcomes from it. So, yeah, genuinely say I'm seeing increased appetite from public sector agencies around that space.